Hello, everybody. This is going to be You're an Expert. Here's How to Teach One with Shannon Turner.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for coming to my talk. I'm Shannon Turner, and this is You Are an Expert. Here's How to Teach Like One. When we have expertise in a subject, it's really common to take for granted that we'll be able to effectively communicate that expertise to someone else. Because knowing how to code and being able to teach it, these are two separate skills. So today you will learn, or perhaps relearn, how to teach, and in so doing, become a better mentor, manager, teacher, and presenter. So first, a little bit about me. I am the founder of Hear Me Code, like I am woman, Hear Me Code, which offers free beginner-friendly Python classes for more than 3,000 women in the Washington, D.C. area. I started... Thank you. I started informally teaching just a small group of friends who I know who wanted to learn how to code, and I did this around my kitchen table. And I never really imagined that Hear Me Code would be a thing, but it has grown and totally taken over my life. So this talk is really based on everything that I have learned that I could cram into 30 minutes. This is based on I developed the curriculum. For the first 8 months, I taught every single class. And now, I hardly ever get to teach because the students have become the teachers. And I do one-on-one train the trainers with every single teacher. And I've been a teaching assistant many, many times. And so I think these are the 4 main categories of advice that I would give to you to help you be a better teacher, mentor, manager, and presenter. Because I think these 4 categories are really what you need to keep in mind as you're presenting. So number 1, know your audience. Number 2, use examples that connect. Number 3, know what to hold back. And number 4, foster a love of learning. To start off, know your audience. And here I want to take my own advice and say, who is going to get the most out of this talk? Do you have to be a teacher in a formal setting? Do you have to have any teaching experience? Definitely not. This talk, I'm aiming it at folks who maybe manage a junior developer and want to help them reach their potential, someone who manages mid-level developers and wants to see them grow into senior developers. Maybe you teach coding at any level, formally or informally, or help others to pick up these skills. Or maybe you're thinking about giving a talk at PyCon next year and want to pick up some tips. So if you fall into any of those categories or adjacent to, I think you're going to get a lot out of this talk, and I'm hoping to give you practical takeaways that you can put to use right away to help you be a better presenter, better teacher, better mentor, and better manager. So first off, with know your audience, is connect with them. You might have noticed that my very first slide was, who the heck am I? Why am I standing up here? Why might I be an expert on the subject of teaching? What can I offer you? Why should you listen to me? So connect with your audience because you're going to be spending a lot of time together. And I also like to take attendance. We're not going to do that today. But I like to take attendance because I care about getting to know them too. Next up, what motivates them? Find out what motivates your students, because if you know why they want to learn, and if you know what they want to learn, that can help you tailor your lesson. And when we have a large class, tailoring your lesson means touching on the different motivations for people in the room. So for instance, I framed this talk as being interesting and applicable to many different groups of people, people who are mentors, managers, thinking about giving a talk next year, and so on. And set expectations. because people attending your talk or taking your class or learning from you should know upfront what they're going to be learning. So that also helps you to set and create a lesson goal and a lesson plan. And you should stick to that. What do you want students to take away from your lesson? For example, I said for this talk that I wanted to give all of you a series of tips that you could put to use right away to help you be a better mentor, manager, teacher, and presenter. Empathize with your audience. What is their level of understanding? And don't make assumptions, because if you assume too high, then what you're talking about might go over people's heads. If you assume too low, you're probably being condescending, and that's not going to work out well. Now, you could ask, but keep in mind that people may not want to be 100% truthful with their level of comfort with the material. They might pretend to know things. So what's the solution here? I think it's reframing the way that you teach so that it's accessible to people at many different levels. And kind of related is don't make anyone feel less than, because nobody likes being talked down to. And if people feel like you're talking down to them, they're going to tune the rest of what you say completely out. Remove distractions. What could get in the way of learning? This could be so many different things. And I want you to think really broadly about what might constitute a distraction. This could be things like, can you see the words up on the screen? Is the font size too small? Is the contrast not high enough? Python does a really great job of removing distractions by, even if you can't hear me, they've got live captioning, which is incredible. Think about all of the things that might get in the way of learning, all of these roadblocks. This could be other things like sexist jokes, unexplained acronyms. Really take a broad view, anything that might get in the way of learning, and remove these roadblocks. And use live coding sparingly, because a little bit will go a long way. Now, if you're only doing live coding and you don't have any slides, this can be really difficult to follow because students are like looking at their screen and trying to look up at yours, trying to follow along. It can be really challenging. It's also difficult to refer back to a known working example. So if you're going to use live coding, that's fine. Just make sure that it's not your whole thing, because that can be really challenging. It's also really prone to errors. And if you've ever given a live demo, it's very nerve-wracking, right? And you're prone to fixing those errors on the fly, and that might derail you, and you might not meet your lesson plan and goals. So if you're going to do live coding, just a little bit. And remember your journey. Where are they in their journey? Because nobody hits a home run the first time. Think about how long it took for you. Think about how you didn't become an expert overnight. Think about how much work it took for you to get where you are. And remember your journey. Try to empathize with them. Smash jargon. Make sure you define acronyms or insider speak. Don't assume that everybody knows what they are, even if they're super common to you. Or better yet, use more accessible language. And a great way to do that is keeping it conversational. Speak as plainly as possible. Use uncomplicated words to explain what you mean. Or pretend that you're having a conversation with Python. Hey, Python, can you open up this file? Sure, Shannon. Which file? I'd like you to open attendees.csv. Okay, are you reading to that file? Are you writing to it? I'm reading from it. And even though I don't have code up here, you can all picture what that might look like. So to recap, because a little bit of repetition is also a great teaching tool, know your audience, connect with them. What can they learn from you? Why should they listen to you? Find out what motivates them, what they want to learn, and why, because that can help you tailor your lesson accordingly. Set expectations so they know upfront what they're going to be getting into. Empathize with them. What is their level of understanding? And don't make assumptions. Don't make them feel less than. Nobody likes being talked down to. Remove distractions, and think about distractions in the broadest possible terms. Use live coding sparingly, because a little bit goes a long way. Remember your journey, because you didn't become an expert overnight, and you shouldn't expect them to either. Smash that jargon. Make sure that you're defining acronyms or other common concepts, even if you are super comfortable with them and you already know what it is, make sure you're defining it. And keep it conversational. Use uncomplicated words to explain what you mean. Next up, we're going to move to examples that connect. Number one rule of this is to use examples that people already understand. At Hear Me Code, we take attendance to teach for loops, and we do it again to teach enumerate. This is a photo with how we do that. So we have a couple of folks standing up. One way that attendance can look is you stand up, you say your name, you sit back down. And this is actually how we teach for loops in Hear Me Code. And what that code might look like would be something like for name in attendees, print name. So this is something that people are very familiar with already. And so when it comes time to learning for loops, it really does connect well with people. Other examples that are great for things like loops and lists include things like days of the week, months of the year. These are things that people already understand, so you don't have to explain them already. They make for great examples. Use specific examples. Foo, bar, and baz, I'm sorry, but they don't mean anything. It's just an abstract generalization. And even if you're comfortable with foo, bar, and baz, new learners really struggle with it. And it's really confusing. So I want to challenge you, because I know folks use foo, bar, and baz because it's easy, it's quick, you don't got to think about it too much. But I want to challenge you to take a little bit of extra time and come up with an example that is specific, something that people will connect with. Great way to do that is to draw on your vast expertise, right? Think about all of the ways that maybe you have used these concepts that you're teaching in the past. Think about how you have used these concepts and work them in to your lesson. And ask yourself questions like, how will students be able to use what I'm teaching? Another way of thinking about this is don't just teach the syntax, teach the context for why you're teaching this, right? Folks should know right away why they'd be able to use this. One of my favorite examples of this is in Hear Me Code. At the end of each class, we demo real skill level appropriate projects at the end of the lesson. And one of our frequent teaching assistants, she teaches with how you can use string methods, slicing, and conditionals to validate whether a social security number is valid or not. You can do all of this by the end of lesson 1, and that's a super practical thing that she actually does in her day job. Ask yourself questions like, why? So what? When will I use this? Because these questions will help clarify, 1, if your examples are practical, and 2, if you should be teaching this concept right now or even at all. And again, when you're thinking about your examples, they don't have to be applicable to every single situation, but examples that are clearly defined, that relate to something actually real and practical, where you understand why you're using something, those are the best examples. Those are ones that really connect with people. And teach one concept at a time, because it's really difficult to learn more than one thing at once. And I don't just mean, making sure that your slides aren't super cluttered, although that too. Before I took my own advice on this, on Hear Me Code's Lesson 2 slides, I was teaching the 3 main ways that you could use list.pop all on a single slide. I had my list days of the week, and I had days of week.pop to remove the last item from the list. I had days of week.pop index to remove a specific item from the list, and I had day is equal to days of week.pop to remove the last item and save it into a variable. And I had all of this on one slide. What was I thinking? But now, I've broken it all up onto 3 slides, and it's much easier to understand because each concept comes one after the other. So don't be afraid of having a lot of slides. It's better to break them up. And model good behavior. Model that behavior that you want to see. And it's not just about having meaningful variable names, although that's very important too. Make sure that you are documenting things well. Make sure that your code is readable rather than clever. And be flexible, because especially if you're knowing your audience, your examples might connect with lots of folks, but they might not connect with everyone. So you may need to use lots of different examples, even to teach the same concept. And you might think, oh, Shannon, aren't you being really repetitive and kind of restating the same thing over and over again? Yeah, but it can work. And mistakes are gonna happen. I'm sorry, but they're just gonna happen. No matter how much you prepare, they're gonna happen. So when you make a mistake, turn it into a teachable moment. Explain what happened and narrate how you're fixing it. Oh, crap, I've got this name error here. It's telling me that I haven't defined this variable. Oh, it's because I made a typo. I just misspelled the variable name. And there, now it's fixed. But sometimes doing it wrong on purpose can actually clarify what's happening. So at Hear Me Code, when we're teaching strings, we teach how you can use single quotes and you can use double quotes pretty much interchangeably as long as you're consistent. But what happens when you start your string with a single quote and end it with a double quote? By making these mistakes on purpose in front of everyone, this lets us talk through the error message in front of the group, so when folks make that mistake on accident next time, they're going to be really well prepared. So to recap examples that connect, use examples that people already understand, things like taking attendance, days of the week, months of the year. Use specific examples, and when you can, be practical, drawing on your experience of how you have used this concept in your day job or somewhere else. So draw on your experience and use those practical examples. Ask yourself questions like, why, so what, when will I use this? And make sure that you're only teaching one concept at a time. Don't be afraid to break up your slides into multiple different slides. Model good behavior. Make sure you are demonstrating what you would like to see. Be flexible, because even your best examples might not connect with everybody. Mistakes are going to happen, so turn them into teachable moments, and sometimes doing it wrong on purpose can help clarify what's actually happening. Next, we're going to go to know what to hold back. Answer the question that was asked. Try not to go too far off script or ad-lib too much or go on a tangent, because this can end up being much more confusing than enlightening. So try to answer the question that was asked of you. Nuance isn't always helpful. Teach the most common situations, because that painful corner case that you've bumped up against, they might never encounter it. And teach the pool, not the ocean. Learning is like an ocean. It's impossibly vast, it's deep, it's murky, there's lots of pressure, and it's filled with sea monsters, which is why when we're learning to swim, we start off in a pool. Don't overwhelm new learners with that ocean of information that they will eventually learn. Teach the pool, not the ocean. Know what is relevant in the moment and what is best saved for later. And don't cover too much material. I will say that I cut so much material from this talk that I really wanted to include that was super important to convey, but there just isn't enough time. And so I had to cut lots of material. You will probably cover less ground than you think, so make sure that you practice, time it, and be ready to cut, even if it's material you really want to cover. So to recap, knowing what to hold back, answer the question that was asked, don't go too far off script or on a tangent. Nuance isn't always helpful, so teach those most common situations. Teach the pool, not the ocean. Don't overwhelm your new learners with that ocean of information that they will eventually learn. And don't cover too much material all at once. Finally, let's foster a love of learning. Reward curiosity. Children ask the best questions until it's crushed out of them by tired adults. We all start out curious and full of wonder. Children ask questions like, why is the sky blue? Questions that adults tend not to ask, questions that adults tend to take for granted. But always questions like, well, why? And well, what if? Right? So encourage that curiosity, reward it. Don't crush it out of new learners, because new learners start off asking these great questions too. A great way to do that is with this magic phrase. I don't know. Let's find out. This magic phrase reminds people that you don't need to know everything. It's also an honest phrase because nobody knows everything. It's a humbling phrase. Remember this one. Another phrase I like is, great question. I love your instincts. Don't be annoyed when a learner is mentally jumping ahead a few slides, asking about material that you're about to cover, because that's a sign that you're doing a good job. That's a sign that they are extrapolating from something that you've taught them. And celebrate progress. Give positive feedback to encourage growth. But we all know that negativity stifles learning and makes us not want to do it anymore, right? Please keep this in mind when you're posting on Stack Overflow. And again, remember your journey. You didn't become an expert overnight, but also you can be the mentor that you wished you had. You can be that person to somebody else. Move about. If you only pay attention to one slide, make it this one. Teaching concepts through movement makes for unforgettable experiences. What do I mean by this? Here's a photo from lesson 1 with how we teach slicing. We have 6 people holding up cards, one with each character on it, spelling out Python, Python. And we have folks step forward if they are part of that slice, and we call out different slices. And this really does work to teach slicing, but most importantly is people remember it. No matter how good your slides are, no matter how much time you spent on them, no matter how many times you practiced, People probably won't remember your slides, but they will remember activities they did as part of your lesson. One thing that we do to teach enumerate is, remember how we teach for loops? You know, for name and attendees, print name, stand up, say your name, sit back down. So that's how we teach for loops, and once people have a good grasp of for loops, let's throw some enumerate in there. And now we ask folks to stand up and say their index as well as their name. And so that helps to solidify the for loops, but also enumerate. When we teach zip, we have people form up into 2 lines. We pair them off like they're walking in a wedding. When I'm teaching while loops, I hold out a handful of candy, and I have a volunteer say, hey, Shannon, can I have a candy? Here you go. Hey, Shannon, can I have a candy? Here you go. Hey, Shannon, can I have a candy? Nope, I'm all out. And this is actually how we teach these concepts, and people remember it. We all learn by teaching. It is a great way to reinforce and solidify what we've learned. It is a very humbling thing, and no matter how many times you've taught, you will learn something new by teaching. But also, your students will learn by teaching as well. So make sure that you're creating opportunities for your students to teach others. One way I love to do this in Hear Me Code is I will walk one person through all of the installation, the setup, and running their first hello world, and then I say, can you show your neighbor? Can you walk them through that? Right away, it solidifies what they learned, and it creates a bond between people at the same table. And it gets setup and installation done really quickly. So to recap, fostering a love of learning, reward curiosity. Don't crush that curiosity out of your new learners. Great way to do this is with the magic phrases, I don't know, let's find out. And great question, I love your instincts. Celebrate progress and move about. If you can teach through movement, that is going to make for unforgettable experiences. We all learn by teaching, but your students will learn by teaching as well. So make sure that you're giving them opportunities to teach. And now, you are an expert. You know how to teach like one, and I would love to hear about how you're incorporating these learnings into presentations, talks, tutorials, all of that. So please say hi at shannonvturner.com, and if you'd like to get the slides, and when the video is all finished, I will also post it here, shannonvturner.com/PyCon. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and I'll take questions in the hall.
Thank you to Shannon, and as she said, please meet at the back for questions. Thank you.